Something has just happened on the dusty, frozen plains of Mars that should not be possible. Something so violently contradictory to everything we know about interstellar objects, cosmic timelines, and the ancient formation of our solar system that the Chinese National Space Administration is now in a state of controlled panic because Tianwen-1, China's Mars-orbiting spacecraft, has just captured the clearest, closest, and most unsettling images of 3I Atlas ever recorded. And what those images reveal has sent shockwaves through every major space agency on Earth. The object is older than our solar system, far older, older by billions of years, and its structure defies every natural explanation astronomers have leaned on to stay calm because this thing does not look like a comet, does not look like an asteroid, does not resemble any fragment of cosmic debris humanity has ever catalogued. And if you want to keep following these increasingly terrifying developments surrounding 3I Atlas, smash that like button right now so the algorithm knows you're watching, because what I'm about to tell you is the kind of discovery governments classify instantly. Not because it's dangerous to know, but because it's dangerous to understand. And let me be absolutely clear. Mars should not have been able to see this object at all. Not at this distance, not at this angle, not with this kind of clarity. And yet Tianwen-1's high-resolution camera captured it perfectly because 3I Atlas did something impossible, something no natural interstellar body has ever done. It veered toward Mars, altered its position relative to the Sun, and moved directly into the orbital corridor of Tianwen-1 as though it wanted to be seen, positioning itself in a way that provided an unobstructed imaging opportunity so perfect that orbital analysts assumed the telemetry was fake until they checked the raw feed from the spacecraft's onboard systems. And that is when the panic began, because the object's surface, once assumed to be rough, chaotic, scarred by eons of cosmic radiation, revealed symmetrical patterns, structured ridges, geometric segmentations, and layered material bands so uniform they look engineered, not eroded, designed, not accidental. And the deeper the Chinese science teams zoomed, the worse it became, especially when they realized that some of those surface patterns are older than the Sun itself based on isotopic sampling of reflected light captured by Tianwen-1's spectrometer, which showed decay ratios matching materials formed more than 6.5 billion years ago, predating the birth of our own solar system by over 2 billion years, meaning 3I Atlas is not simply ancient. It is impossibly ancient, a relic from an era before Earth existed, before the Sun ignited, before the planets took shape. And this single fact has shattered every model of interstellar object formation we have, because objects that old should have long since disintegrated, eroded, or been torn apart by gravitational interactions over cosmological time. And yet here it is, intact, structured, accelerating, maneuvering, and now revealing itself in unprecedented detail to a probe orbiting Mars, as though it has been waiting for someone, anyone, to notice what it truly is. And as Chinese scientists scrambled to understand what they were seeing, their internal message boards erupted into chaos because the spectral analysis didn't just reveal extreme age, it revealed composition signatures that should not exist in nature at all. Exotic metallic ratios that do not match any known stellar formation process, with absorption lines indicating materials forged under pressures and temperatures far beyond anything found in planetary cores or supernova ejecta. And when the data was forwarded, quietly, secretly, to several international research groups for cross-verification, the response was immediate and unanimous. The object's surface is composed of layered structures, far too organized and too compositionally pure to be the result of geological processes. And one researcher reportedly wrote in a classified memo that this is not a rock, it is a construction, a statement that has since been buried under layers of government restriction, but continues circulating among those who saw the images before they were sealed away, especially because Tianwen-1 captured something even more alarming. Microscopic alignment patterns across the surface that appear to shift subtly with angle and illumination, behaving more like adaptive materials than inert stone. And when analysts compared these patterns frame by frame, they noticed that the alignments changed in sync with 3I Atlas's most recent acceleration bursts, as if the surface itself responded to internal forces, adjusting its structure in real time. And this discovery shocked even those who had already accepted that the object was unnatural, because adaptive surface modulation is not something associated with comets or asteroids, but with technology, the kind that regulates heat, energy, or stress distribution, the kind that requires intention behind its design. And this is why senior CNSA officials immediately locked down access to the raw data and convened an emergency roundtable with high-ranking military officials, because what Tianwen-1 recorded is not just scientifically impossible, it is strategically terrifying, especially after orbital calculations showed that 3I Atlas didn't simply drift into the spacecraft's field of view, but adjusted its trajectory with precision that perfectly compensated for Mars's gravitational influence, aligning itself with a predicted point in Tianwen-1's orbit, an alignment so exact it required advanced knowledge of the spacecraft's position, velocity, and orbital period, and when analysts calculated how much lead time the object would have needed to predict this orbital match, the number that emerged was so staggering that multiple researchers refused to sign off on the report. 3I Atlas would have needed to calculate Tianwen-1's future position over 6 weeks in advance, meaning that not only does the object understand gravitational fields, it is computing them with an intelligence or mechanism far beyond any technology humanity possesses. This realization has now triggered panic far beyond China, because as soon as the existence of these images leaked, just enough for whispers to begin circulating in international astrophysics channels, NASA, ESA, and other agencies quietly demanded access to the data. But CNSA has refused every request so far, heightening global suspicion and fueling speculation that China has discovered something so profoundly destabilizing that even acknowledging it could shift geopolitical balance overnight, and the fear is growing because, according to anonymous sources within the CNSA, the highest levels of the Chinese government believe they have captured the first clear evidence that 3I Atlas is not just old, not just engineered, not just active, but possibly watching, especially after Tianwen-1 detected a narrowband pulse emitted from the object moments after the imaging sequence completed, a pulse that did not match cosmic background radiation, solar interference, or spacecraft emissions, but instead appeared directed, targeted, as though the object responded to being observed, and when the team reanalyzed the pulse, they found harmonic structuring in its frequency bands, the kind of modulation associated with informational encoding rather than natural radiation noise. And this discovery has terrified every scientist involved because it means that 3I Atlas may not simply be detectable. It may be interactive, capable of responding when observed, capable of reacting when scanned, capable of acknowledging other presences. And the fact that it chose to reveal itself to Tianwen-1 first, rather than to NASA, ESA, or any other global space agency, has ignited frantic behind-the-scenes diplomatic activity, as nations attempt to figure out why China was the one to receive this moment, or whether it was chosen deliberately, and if so, by what criteria. And as global agencies quietly compete for scraps of leaked information, the situation has grown even more disturbing because the longer researchers study Tianwen-1's images, the more anomalies they uncover, each one pushing a 3I Atlas further away from the realm of the natural and deeper into something engineered, ancient, and impossibly advanced. Especially after analysts noticed a subtle but repeating geometric distortion along the object's terminator line, patterns that at first appeared to be shadows, but upon enhancement revealed themselves as long, perfectly parallel grooves running across hundreds of meters, grooves that maintain identical spacing despite the object's curvature, an architectural symmetry so precise that it cannot be the result of random cosmic wear. And when CNSA geospatial specialists modeled the grooves, they discovered something chilling. The spacing forms a logarithmic progression, a mathematical pattern used in engineered systems to distribute stress efficiently across a structure, and nothing like this has ever been documented on a comet or asteroid because nature does not build in logarithmic arrays. Technology does, intelligence does, and this discovery aligns perfectly with a deeper, even more unsettling finding uncovered by a small team of physicists at Beijing University, who were granted limited access to the spectroscopic dataset from Tianwen-1's encounter, because when they examined the isotopic ratios of certain surface materials, they found a decay pattern that suggests the object has undergone multiple phases of reconstruction or resurfacing over billions of years, meaning 3I Atlas is not a fossil frozen in time. It is something maintained, something updated, something intentionally preserved across cosmological epochs, and no natural object could possibly display these characteristics, especially not one that has drifted through interstellar space for billions of years without being pulverized, eroded, or destroyed. And this leads to the darkest question now circulating inside China's highest scientific circles. If 3I Atlas has survived longer than our solar system has existed, and if it has been maintained in that time, then who or what has been maintaining it? And even more terrifying, where are they now, and why is the object here at this moment in human history? Questions that have paralyzed analysts as new data continues to pour in, including a startling revelation from Tianwen-1's magnetometer suite, which detected a faint yet structured magnetic envelope around the object, a field far too coherent to be natural, one that shifts with nearly instantaneous responsiveness to solar wind fluctuations, almost like an active shielding system. And when researchers mapped the fluctuations frame by frame, they realized the field's pulse frequency correlates with the micro vibrations in the object's internal mass distribution identified earlier by other observatories, meaning the magnetic field and the internal structure are operating in tandem, part of a unified system, a mechanism, a machine, And the implications of this have now spread beyond science into national defense, prompting China's Central Military Commission to demand full control of the analysis pipeline, effectively sealing the data from civilian researchers entirely. But the panic inside the CNSA has only intensified because the most recent tracking vectors show that 3I Atlas is no longer drifting along its previous path. It is adjusting again, subtly, precisely, and this time the movement is even more unnatural because the object has begun aligning its rotational axis toward Mars, and more specifically, toward Tianwen-1's orbital plane, as though it is keeping the spacecraft in its focus, maintaining a line of sight. And when analysts projected this alignment backward, they made a terrifying discovery. 3I Atlas has been making micro-adjustments for days to maintain this orientation, long before anyone realized it. Tiny shifts, too, might it to be detected until Tianwen-1 moved into the perfect viewing angle, which strongly suggests the object intentionally positioned itself to be seen by the orbiter, prompting the question no one wants to ask. Did 3I Atlas reveal itself? And if so, why Mars? Why Tianwen-1? Why now? And to deepen the mystery further, the orbiter's thermal imaging captured something beyond comprehension during its final pass. A localized hotspot on the object's surface that bloomed and faded in a perfect sinusoidal cycle like a pulse, a heartbeat, a controlled energy surge rising and falling with precision. And although the official explanation labeled it as thermal noise, the internal logs tell a different story, noting that the pulse frequency was stable, consistent, and harmonic across all sensors, a signature no random thermal artifact could ever produce. And this has led several analysts to quietly speculate that the hotspot may represent an active subsystem, an engine, a reactor, a communication node, or something far stranger, and that speculation has reached a fever pitch because the pulse increased slightly in amplitude during the exact moment Tianwen-1 captured its highest resolution image, a detail far too coincidental for comfort. And now, with global agencies scrambling to understand the implications, a deeper dread is spreading across every scientific team involved, because if 3I Atlas revealed itself deliberately, if it is older than the Sun, if it carries engineered materials and active subsystems, if it possesses adaptive surfaces and internal mass-shifting mechanisms, and if it can respond to external observation, then this is no longer an interstellar object. It is an artifact, a relic, a machine older than Earth itself, one that appears to be awakening, preparing, or following a sequence set into motion billions of years ago. And the question now echoing in every sealed conference room, every encrypted channel, every sleepless scientist's mind is the same. What happens when this ancient object finishes revealing itself? What happens when whatever intelligence created it completes the next step in its sequence? And what does 3I Atlas want with Mars, with Tianwen-1, and with us? And as China rushes to contain the growing panic inside its scientific and military institutions, new data from Tianwen-1 has forced every researcher involved into a state of escalating terror, because just when they thought the revelations surrounding 3I Atlas could not become any more incomprehensible, the orbiter's high-frequency radar imager detected something that has shattered even the most conservative scientific assumptions. Internal structure, not voids, not fractures, not density anomalies, but unmistakable geometric layering, hundreds of meters deep, arranged in repeating octagonal and hexagonal patterns that no natural process can create, patterns that resemble compartments, chambers, and conduits, almost like the internal superstructure of a vessel. And when the imaging team filtered the scans, they found longitudinal channels running through the object from pole to pole, channels aligned so precisely with its rotational axis that multiple analysts independently concluded they must serve a functional purpose. And this discovery has ignited a quiet internal debate about what 3I Atlas actually is, because the radar echoes show sharp boundaries, straight lines, and uniform thicknesses, traits of artificial construction. And worse, some of these internal structures are not static, not dormant, but moving, shifting by centimeters at a time, not randomly, but rhythmically, in sync with the thermal pulses captured earlier, suggesting that something inside the object is cycling, activating, or transitioning into a new operational phase. And this realization has left the brightest minds in China completely rattled, especially when they overlaid radar movement data with electromagnetic readings from Tianwen-1, which revealed that the internal shifts triggered tiny magnetic realignments in perfect synchronization, like the humming resonance of a machine powering up. And this evidence has now pushed several high-ranking scientists, privately, fearfully, to whisper the possibility that 3I Atlas is not merely active, not merely ancient, but alive in a mechanical sense, a megastructure or autonomous construct capable of internal reconfiguration. And the implications of this are so staggering that no one dares document them formally, yet the truth is obvious to everyone with clearance. Whatever 3I Atlas is, it is fully functional on some level, and it is responding to something, possibly to the presence of Tianwen-1, possibly to the environmental conditions of the inner solar system, or possibly to a pre-programmed sequence that has been dormant for billions of years and is only now being triggered as the object approaches our star. And that leads to the most chilling discovery yet, one that Tianwen-1's orbit allowed it to capture purely by chance. A faint but perfectly symmetrical circular depression on the object's sun-facing hemisphere. A feature so smooth, so mathematically perfect, so deeply recessed, that it resembles an aperture, a hatch, or an intake port. And when Chinese imaging specialists enhanced the frame, they found microscopic striations spiraling inward like the grooves on a mechanical iris. And although no one dares say it aloud, everyone who has seen the image feels the same cold realization. This is not erosion, not impact scarring, but something that looks disturbingly like an engineered opening mechanism. And now panic has begun leaking into diplomatic channels as foreign intelligence agencies attempt to determine whether China has made contact with something far beyond their control, or whether 3I Atlas is about to open, release, or activate something no human civilization is prepared to face. And to make matters worse, the object is now beginning to rotate in a new pattern, a subtle but deliberate shift that aligns its strange circular aperture directly toward Mars, a movement so intentional that tracking teams immediately recalculated its rotational inertia and confirmed that the object is expending energy to maintain this orientation, meaning it is not simply tumbling, it is aiming. And this single detail has triggered chaos among analysts because Tianwen-1 is the only spacecraft currently in the correct observational corridor to witness what happens next, suggesting that whatever is unfolding is being directed, or at least timed, to be observed specifically from Mars orbit. And the deeper implications of that are horrifying, because if 3I Atlas is billions of years old, if it predates our solar system, if it has been drifting through interstellar space waiting for the right conditions, then it is entirely possible that what is happening now is not accidental, not random, not triggered by Mars or by Tianwen-1 at all, but part of an ancient, predetermined sequence designed to activate when this artifact encounters a star system with specific conditions, conditions our solar system now fulfills. And the sequence is accelerating, evolving, shifting into its next phase. And the fear inside every lab and control room is reaching a breaking point because no one knows what this next phase will look like. No one knows whether the object is preparing to open, transmit, release, awaken, or transform. But the truth is becoming unavoidable. 3I Atlas did not come here to die, did not arrive here by accident, and every new piece of data suggests it is older, smarter, and more purpose-driven than anything humanity has ever encountered. And the question that now looms, suffocating and immense, is simple yet terrifying. When this ancient megastructure completes whatever stage it is entering next, what will emerge from the darkness? And what does something older than the sun itself intend to do now that it has finally reached us? And as the world's scientific and intelligence communities desperately try to understand the implications of this ancient, shifting megastructure aligning itself toward Mars, the situation has taken a far darker turn, because Tianwen-1's latest telemetry, transmitted only minutes before a sudden and unexplained communication blackout, revealed something so catastrophic to our understanding of cosmic history that several Chinese mission controllers reportedly broke protocol and attempted to contact foreign agencies out of sheer panic. The aperture-like circular depression on 3I Atlas's surface began to emit a faint, concentrated beam of low-frequency radiation. Not random noise, not natural thermal emission, but a tightly collimated, highly structured signal that pulsed at intervals matching the internal oscillations detected earlier by radar imaging. And when the team managed to isolate the pulse sequence, they discovered that its frequency ratios followed prime number spacing, a mathematical pattern universally associated with artificial origin, because nature does not encode signals in prime harmonics, but intelligence does. And this revelation has thrown every specialist into a frenzy as they attempt to determine whether the signal is a scan, a probe, a data burst, a handshake protocol, or something far more ominous, especially after the pulse intensity increased by a factor of 3 during Tianwen-1's closest approach, as though the object were actively examining the orbiter, mapping it, or attempting to communicate with it. And this possibility has terrified analysts across every institution because the signal was not directed at Mars, not at the Sun, but directly and precisely at the spacecraft. And now internal documents leaked from CNSA suggest that the frequency modulation of the pulse contains repeating amplitude clusters that resemble encoding blocks, almost like packets of information. And although Chinese scientists have not yet publicly admitted this, multiple sources claim that early attempts to decode the structure revealed patterns that do not map to any known natural process, digital encoding scheme, or random radiation event, but instead show segments of ordered complexity, too simple to be a language, too structured to be noise, like the initial handshake attempt of a system expecting a response. And the horror of that implication has rippled across the highest levels of global leadership. Because if 3I Atlas is transmitting, if it is signaling, if it is awakening, then it may not be alone in its purpose, and it may not be dormant anymore. And to make matters worse, Tianwen-1's final images before the blackout show the aperture beginning to expand, not rapidly, not violently, but with slow mechanical precision, like an iris opening, revealing beneath the surface a concentric series of nested metallic rings, each one rotating slightly out of sync with the others, creating a shimmering interference pattern that has baffled every optical engineer who has examined it because the movement is too smooth, too stable, too graceful for any structure exposed to the violent stressors of interstellar travel, meaning these rings were protected, sealed, waiting for something to trigger their activation, and several analysts now believe that the activation may have been prompted by the presence of Tianwen-1, or perhaps by the conditions of the inner solar system, or by a threshold the object has only now crossed after billions of years of dormancy. And if that is true, then we are witnessing the awakening of a system older than Earth, older than Mars, older than the Sun itself, an intelligence, mechanism, or artifact so ancient that our entire species is as younger than the dust on its outer shell. And this realization has plunged every involved agency into a silent emergency, because the aperture's expansion corresponds to an internal power surge detected across multiple sensor logs, a surge whose harmonics match the magnetic field. Oscillations observed earlier, meaning the internal systems are synchronizing, aligning, and spinning up into some new operational phase, and no one knows what that function will be. But Tianwen-1's last readable telemetry indicated rising energy levels inside the object. Energy levels so high that the orbiter's radiation monitors spiked for 3 consecutive seconds before all data abruptly stopped, suggesting either an intentional suppression, an overload, or an event powerful enough to disrupt communications entirely. And now Mars is silent, the orbiter unresponsive, its tracking signal gone, leaving only one horrifying certainty. 3I Atlas is no longer dormant, no longer passive, no longer silent, and with every new movement, every new pulse, every new rotation of its impossible internal rings, it is becoming clearer that this ancient megastructure did not come here by chance, did not reveal itself accidentally, and did not activate without purpose. And now the question that keeps every analyst awake, every general terrified, every scientist paralyzed, is no longer whether 3I Atlas is artificial, no longer whether it is awakening, but something far more terrifying. What happens when the aperture fully opens? What emerges from a machine older than our sun? And what does an artifact that has drifted for billions of years across the darkness of interstellar space finally intend to do now that it has found us? And now, as global power grids quietly reroute bandwidth, as classified satellites are repositioned without explanation, and as deep space monitoring stations receive urgent encrypted updates, the truth that no world government is willing to speak aloud is becoming unavoidable. Whatever is happening on the surface of 3I Atlas is accelerating, escalating, unfolding with a precision and inevitability that suggests this moment, this exact moment in cosmic history, was anticipated long before humanity existed, because new gravitational data from ESA's Deep Space Network indicates that the object's internal mass is redistributing again, not randomly, but in a pattern so highly controlled that it resembles the balancing sequence of a system preparing to activate a large-scale mechanism, and worse, a faint pressure wave, far too subtle for traditional instruments but unmistakable in high-sensitivity accelerometer data, has begun emanating from the object in periodic pulses, as though it is testing or calibrating something at a scale we cannot comprehend. And when scientists compared the timing of these pulses to Tianwen-1's final telemetry, a chilling synchronization emerged. The pulses began only after the orbiter's last transmission, as though the activation of the aperture required confirmation that the observer had seen it open, a possibility so terrifying that even the most skeptical analysts have gone silent, especially because newly leaked fragments of Tianwen-1's final images, rapidly deleted from internal servers but cached by at least one frightened engineer, show the aperture's inner rings rotating faster, aligning into a series of nested geometries that matched no known technological paradigm on Earth, structures so intricate and mathematically perfect that they resemble gravitational lensing arrays or energy-focusing mechanisms. And when computational physicists attempted to simulate the ring geometry's purpose, the models returned one horrifying possibility again and again. The configuration is optimized not for propulsion, not for communication, but for projection. Some form of directed output that could involve light, radiation, particles, fields, or something entirely beyond human experience. And this realization has triggered a level of panic among global leadership that dwarfs any alert in modern history. Because the possibility that 3I Atlas may be preparing to emit something toward Mars, toward Earth, or toward deep space forces a question humanity is still too fragile to confront. Is this an ancient warning system, An autonomous sentinel, a beacon, a probe, a seed, an arc, or something far more unfathomable? And if it is about to activate, then what sequence is humanity about to witness? Because the newest tracking data shows that the object's rotation has stabilized into a perfectly consistent period, a behavior associated with systems entering final operational readiness, and its magnetic field has intensified into a coherent dipole with harmonic sidebands that appear modulated, too structured to be natural, too synchronized to be accidental, almost like a countdown, a prelude, an algorithm running through its final checks. And no one knows what triggers the next stage: proximity to the sun, Mars's orbital position, the presence of an observer, a threshold of internal charge, or simply the end of a timer that has been running since before Earth formed. But the fact that Tenwen-1's sudden blackout aligns perfectly with the onset of the object's new behavior has sent a wave of dread through every agency monitoring the situation, because if the orbiter was disabled, intentionally or incidentally, then 3I Atlas has already demonstrated the ability to interfere with technology. And now, with its aperture expanding, its internal rings accelerating, its magnetic field harmonizing, and its gravitational signature shifting in patterns that resemble a system aligning toward some unknown purpose, one truth stands above all others, like a shadow stretching across the future of our species. 3I Atlas is not a relic of a dead civilization, not a drifting monument lost to time, not a passive artifact of a forgotten epoch. It is active, it is ancient, and it is awakening. And the question that now hangs over every scientist, every general, every leader, every person who dares to look at the data is no longer simply what it is, or where it came from, or how it survived billions of years in the void, but something far more immediate, far more existential, far more terrifying. Now that this ancient machine has finally begun to open, after eons of silence, what will happen when the aperture fully unfurls? What force or message or entity will emerge from the heart of a structure older than the sun? And what does this cosmic giant, awakened for the first time in billions of years, intend to do now that it has turned its gaze upon us?